The world narrowed to a piercing shriek, Sarah's shriek tearing through the idyllic afternoon quiet. Mark's blood ran cold, the half-assembled crib forgotten in the nursery. He was out the back door and onto the patio in a heartbeat, his lungs burning. Blood. So much blood. It bloomed across the pristine white of Sarah's maternity dress, a grotesque parody of the roses she so lovingly tended. She was on the flagstones, writhing a choked animalistic whimper, clawing its way from her throat. Her hands, slick and crimson, pressed desperately against her thigh. The wicker patio chair, her favorite, lay innocently on its side. But beside it, almost hidden beneath the overturned cushion, lay a single, tiny, worn leather baby shoe. Pale blue. Impossibly small. Mark's mind, usually a fortress of emergency room calm, fractured. Lily. His hand instinctively went to his own chest, as if he could feel the phantom flutter of his daughter's heartbeat, the one he'd heard with such joyous relief at their last ultrasound. Sarah, God Sarah. He was across the patio in 3 frantic strides, dropping to his knees, the scent of ozone, and something metallic, sharper than copper, assaulting his nostrils, a vile counterpoint to the sweet perfume of Sarah's roses. The chair... Mark, I just... sat down. Her voice was a ragged gasp, her eyes wide with a terror that mirrored his own. His gaze shot to the overturned chair. Silver glinted wickedly from the shredded underside of the cushion. Not just one, but multiple razor-thin edges, deliberately embedded points angled upwards. A booby trap. And the shoe. What in God's name did the shoe mean? A warning, a grotesque calling card, raw, unadulterated fury, cold and sharp as the blades themselves, punched through his shock. This wasn't an accident. This was an execution attempt. On his wife, on his unborn child. Willow Creek, their sanctuary. 6 months ago, they'd moved into this haven of manicured lawns and hushed cul-de-sacs, drawn by the promise of good schools and a supportive community for Lily. Mark, as head of security for Northwood General Hospital, navigated chaos daily. Home was meant to be the antidote. Sarah, an artist whose vibrant canvases breathed life into their sun-drenched rooms, had been radiant in her 3rd trimester. Their evenings were spent on this very patio, her swollen ankles propped on that exact chair, discussing names, dreams, the gentle unfolding of their future. Lily and I will watch so many sunsets from here, Mark. She'd said, her hand caressing her belly, her smile as warm as the setting sun itself. That image now defiled, fueled an icy inferno in his chest. The first discordant note had been insidious, an unsigned type note about their recycling bin's improper angle. Then the HOA emails a barrage, orchestrated by Mrs. Karen Miller Willow Creek's self-appointed matriarch of misery. Her permed hair, a rigid helmet, seemed to vibrate with perpetual indignation. Her opinions were law, their welcome mat too vibrant. Mark washing his car water wastage, despite no restrictions. Sarah's window box flowers an affront to aesthetic integrity. Mark had counseled patience. She's a busybody, honey. Let it roll off. Sarah, ever the peacemaker, had tried. She'd offered Karen lemonade one scorching afternoon as the woman meticulously measured the grass on the Petersons' lawn. Karen had recoiled as if offered hemlock. I am far too occupied ensuring this community doesn't descend into dereliction to indulge in sugary concoctions, Mrs. Henderson she'd clipped deliberately, using Sarah's maiden name. And that striped patio chair of yours utterly garish. It contravenes the neutral palette outlined in Community Guidelines, Section 4, Subsection B. Sarah had returned shaken. She practically indicted my chair, Mark. He'd kissed her forehead, dismissing it. A mistake. He hadn't grasped the depth of venom coiled beneath Karen Miller's starched exterior. Then there was Tom, a younger man perpetually scowling who did odd jobs around the neighborhood. Sarah had a minor run-in with him a month back. He'd asked to borrow Mark's expensive power washer. Sarah, knowing Mark's meticulous care for his tools, had politely declined, explaining Mark preferred to lend them out himself. Tom had grumbled something about stuck-up new people and stomped off. A trivial incident or so, Mark had thought. The first true alarm, the one that screamed danger, not just annoyance, had sounded last week. A sweltering Tuesday. Sarah's trembling voice on the phone. Mark, come home. Please. He found her on the porch, tears carving paths through the dust on her cheeks, pointing to their small vegetable garden. tomatoes, zucchini, basil, her pride, systematically annihilated, ripped up, stomped into the soil, which was churned as if by a rabid beast. Lying amidst the carnage, a distinctive gardening trowel Sarah's reported missing from their unlocked shed the day before, and partially obscured by a mangled tomato vine, a faint, muddy footprint. Not Karen's sensible orthotics. This was a man's work boot, moderately sized. Tom's she was here earlier, Sarah choked out, referring to Karen. Another notice. Rose bush height. I told her I wasn't well to just leave it. She looked at me. Mark. Such hatred. Said, some people have no respect for community standards. They just expect to get away with everything. Sarah had lain down nauseous, only to discover the devastation later. No direct proof linked Karen to that, but the footprint and the missing trowel. Later that evening, tucked into their mailbox, was another anonymous typed note. Some people need to learn respect. Others don't belong here. The wording felt different from Karen's usual HOA pronouncements, cruder, more direct. Was it Tom still nursing a grudge, or Karen escalating her tactics, perhaps even getting someone else to do her dirty work? The dread had coiled tighter. Mark installed security cameras the next day covering the front and back, a precaution now revealed as tragically insufficient. The days following were thick with unspoken fear. Sarah grew withdrawn. The official HOA warning letter arrived certified mail, a litany of fabricated violations from the decimated garden, unapproved landscaping modifications, to Sarah's striped chair, improper patio furniture aesthetics. Rectify in 48 hours or face fines and further HOA disciplinary action. Signed, Karen Miller, President. Coercion. Harassment. Sarah, pale and defeated, clutched a new plain beige cushion. Maybe if I change this, Mark, no more trouble. Not now. He hated her fear, her stolen joy. He'd drafted a firm reply, hinting at legal action, but hadn't sent it. That was yesterday. Now kneeling in his wife's blood, Mark's training surged. Breathe, Sarah. With me. Deep breaths. His voice the calm ER command he'd used countless times. He eased her hands away. Vicious gashes sliced clean through dress and flesh. Embedded in the deepest wound the glint of more metal. Razor blades, strategically placed, targeted, malicious. To his pregnant wife. The baby shoe. The chilling anonymous note. Who pressure? Direct pressure. He grabbed a clean towel, pressing it hard. Sarah cried out, a raw sound that tore him apart. I know, baby, I know. I'm so sorry. 911. His fingers slick, with her blood, fumbled for his phone. As he dialed, his eyes locked on the sabotage chair, then darted to the tiny, incongruous blue shoe. This took time, planning cold intent. Karen's obsession with the chair was undeniable. But the shoe, the footprint in the garden. The cruder note. Tom's sullen anger, his mind reeled. Sirens wailed, shattering Willow Creek's afternoon peace. Paramedics swarmed. Mark, giving her history, felt his controlled fury solidify. Neighbors emerged. Mrs. Henderson from next door, hand to her mouth. Stoic Mr. Peterson aghast. And then Karen Miller, on her immaculate lawn, arms crossed, watching, not with shock, not with concern, with smug satisfaction. A flicker of triumph in her eyes before it was masked by feigned, distant worry. Mark's blood froze. We need to get her to Northwood General, the lead paramedic said. Assess these lacerations, check on the baby. Riding with us. Mark nodded, his gaze still pinned on Karen. Yes. And officer, he turned to a young policewoman, her eyes serious. I want her investigated. He pointed directly at Karen Miller. She's the HOA president. She's been harassing my wife for months. I believe she's responsible for this. Then a sliver of doubt, a quick addition, but there was also a threatening note, different style, and a footprint in our vandalized garden that wasn't hers. Someone else might be involved. A man named Tom does odd jobs around here. The officer looked from Mark to Karen, then to the brutalized chair her colleague was carefully bagging, the embedded blades glinting. We'll look into all of it, sir. We'll need full statements. In the ambulance, Sarah's skin was cold, her face ashen. Lily, she rasped. Is Lily okay? He squeezed her hand. They'll take care of you both, I promise. But as the doors slammed shut, erasing Karen, Miller's gloating face, a harder resolve, settled in Mark. He wasn't just a husband. He was head of security at Northwood. He knew the system. He would burn it down to find who did this. Northwood General's ER, usually his domain, felt alien terrifying as Sarah was wheeled into a trauma bay. Dr. Ramirez, the on-call obstetrician, met them, her face calm but grave. "Mark, I'm so sorry. Let's see what we're dealing with." Relegated to the waiting area, a place of suffocating helplessness, he heard Sarah's muffled cries, each one a blade in his own gut. Pacing fists clenched the image of those razors. Karen's smirk, Tom's earlier anger, the anonymous note, the tiny blue shoe, a maelstrom of suspicion. He dialed Ben Carter, his lead security investigator at the hospital, an ex-cop with nerves of steel. "Ben, Mark, off the books. Urgent. Sarah, attacked at home." He laid it out the chair, his suspicions about Karen, but also the garden, the footprint, Tom, the anonymous note, the unsettling baby shoe. "Police are involved, but I want our eyes. My patio camera, remote access. Pull the last 24 hours. Look for anyone tampering with that chair, Karen Miller, or Tom. Dark hair, medium build, often wears work boots, or anyone. And Ben, the footage from last Tuesday around the garden, see if you can get a clearer shot of who was there. On it, Mark. How's Sarah? They're working on her. The baby." He couldn't finish. "Hang tough. We'll get him. Or her." An eternity or an hour later, Dr. Ramirez emerged. Mark, his heart hammered. Sarah's stable. Lacerations were deep, nasty. Muscle involvement, but no major arteries. Cleaned, stitched. Blood transfusion. She'll be very sore. Significant scarring. Relief immense and debilitating washed over him. And Lily. The baby, Ramirez's expression softened. Ultrasound. Baby's fine. Strong heartbeat, active. Sarah's body cushioned the impact. Blades didn't reach the uterus. But the stress, blood loss. High risk for premature labor. We're monitoring closely. She's lucky, Mark. It could have been catastrophic. Lucky. The word felt like ash. His phone buzzed. Ben. "Mark, I've got footage. From today. And from last week's garden incident. You need to see this. Now. Grim. Sending a secure link. The police will want this. All of it." His hand trembled. Click. The feed flickered. His patio. Fast forward. Then 10:32 a.m. Just hours before. Karen Miller. She slipped onto their patio like a phantom furtive, constantly checking. Small, dark bag. Mark's breath hitched. She approached Sarah's striped chair. Pulled on gloves. Then from the bag, a handful of utility knife blades glinting malevolently. With chilling, methodical precision, she forced them one by one up through the cushion's weave, embedding them deep, sharp edges upwards. Tested one with a gloved finger, a slight, almost imperceptible nod of satisfaction. Her face, even at this distance, radiated cold, focused malice. 10 minutes, methodical, painstaking. As she finished, she carefully collected any debris. Then she paused. She reached into her bag again and pulled out the small, pale blue baby shoe. She looked at it for a long moment, almost caressed it, before carefully, deliberately placing it beside the chair, partially under the cushion. The camera's microphone, surprisingly sensitive, picked up her muttered words, laced with a venom that chilled Mark to the bone, that should teach the entitled little breeder to respect community standards. Maybe now she'll learn her place. Some people don't deserve children. Bile rose in Mark's throat. Breeder, the contempt. The shoe wasn't a random item. It was hers. Part of her ritual. This wasn't just HOA rules. This was psychopathic. Personal. Twisted. Ben Mark rasped into the phone, barely able to speak. The garden footage from last week. Who was it? Not Miller. Ben said, "Definitely not. Guy in a hoodie, work boots. Can't see his face clearly, but the build could be your Tom. He was quick, brutal. Different MO from Miller's meticulous chair setup. Looks like you might have had two separate situations, Mark. Or Miller's one hell of an actress and has an accomplice for the rough stuff. Two separate streams of malice converging on his family, or one incredibly cunning puppet master." Mark saved the footage of Karen, forwarded it to Detective Harding. "Detective footage from my security camera. Illuminating. He then sent the garden footage. This is from the day our garden was vandalized. Different person. Please look into Tom. Sarah was moved to a private maternity ward room. He sat by her, holding her hand, watching her fitful, sedated sleep. Her bandaged thigh, angry red stitches. Lily safe for now. How close? His phone. Detective Harding, Mr. Coleman. Reviewed the footage of Mrs. Miller. It's monstrous. We have a team en route to her residence. Search warrant, arrest warrant. Aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, felony, fetal endangerment. The baby shoe, that's profoundly disturbing. We're also looking at the garden footage. The MO is different, as you noted. We'll bring Tom in for questioning based on your previous statement and this footage. Your quick thinking, Mr. Coleman. You've given us a very strong case against Miller and a solid lead on the vandalism. Hero no, just a man desperate to protect his family. He looked at Sarah. This wasn't over. Then another call from Ben. Marked something else. That footage of Miller. After she places the blades in the shoe, she goes over to Sarah's rose bushes, the ones near the patio. She pulls out a small, unlabeled spray bottle from her bag and sprays the bases of several plants very thoroughly, then wipes the nozzle carefully and puts it back. Didn't think much of it until Harding's call got me thinking about how far this woman would go. What if it's poison for the plants, or worse, something that could transfer to skin if Sarah touched them, given what she did to the chair? A new wave of icy dread washed over Mark. Sarah often deadheaded her roses, her bare hands touching the leaves, the stems. Ben, can you get a still of that bottle? Send it to Harding. Tell him they need to look for it. Test those rose bushes. He disconnected, his mind racing. This woman was a viper, striking in multiple insidious ways. News of Karen Miller's impending arrest and the questioning of Tom spread through Willow Creek. Mr. Henderson, HOA treasurer, called, voice trembling with horror. Mark, my boy, is it true, Karen? And Sarah Mark confirmed flatly. A long silence. That woman. We knew she was difficult, but this monstrous. Emergency board meeting tonight. We need to address this. Support you. Officially remove her. If you feel up to it, your presence or a statement. Part of Mark recoiled, but another part, the part that saw Karen methodically plant those blades, then the shoe, then potentially poison the roses, knew he had to. Karen thrived on intimidation, on communal apathy. The clubhouse was packed, anxious, angry, bewildered faces. Karen Miller's presidential chair conspicuously empty. Mr. Henderson, somber, recounted the events, voice thick with indignation. Gasps, horrified murmurs, shame on some faces. He invited Mark to speak. Mark stood, calmly, voice filled with controlled anger. He described Sarah's injuries, their terror, the violation. For months, he said, his voice steady, Karen Miller waged a campaign of harassment. Petty complaints escalated to what we now believe was a systematic, premeditated attempt to cause grievous harm, potentially fatal to my wife and my unborn child. The evidence shows her planting razor blades in a chair my pregnant wife used daily. It shows her placing a baby's shoe there, a deeply disturbing act. And it may even show her attempting to poison plants my wife tended. He let it sink in. Some of you found her difficult. Some found it easier to comply. But what happened to Sarah is the result of unchecked power of bitterness, allowed to fester into dangerous delusion. My wife is strong. Our daughter is a fighter. They will recover. But this community must also recover. It must decide what it stands for. As he finished, the clubhouse doors opened. 2 uniformed officers, Detective Harding. Between them, a disheveled, handcuffed Karen Miller. A collective gasp. Her eyes, wild and furious, found Mark. You, she shrieked, lunging, restrained by the officers. You did this. You and your trashy, rule-breaking wife. You deserved it. You all deserved it. Bringing your filth into my neighborhood. She didn't deserve a child. I deserved a child. Her outburst, raw, unhinged, stripped away her facade. The community saw her not a stringent enforcer, but a dangerous, delusional woman, consumed by a toxic brew of envy and perceived victimhood. Detective Harding stepped forward. Karen Miller is charged with aggravated assault with a deadly weapon and felony fetal endangerment. Evidence is overwhelming. We also found a container of concentrated herbicide in her home, matching the description from Mr. Coleman's security footage and residue on Mrs. Coleman's rose bushes. Further charges may be pending regarding that. She will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. As they led a screaming, struggling Karen away, Harding added quietly to Mark, "We questioned Tom. He confessed to the garden vandalism and the anonymous note. Said he was angry, felt disrespected. Stupid thuggish. But he seemed genuinely shocked about the chair attack. Claims he knew nothing about that. His timeline and the footage support two separate perpetrators. He'll face charges for vandalism and making threats." A stunned silence then. Neighbors approached Mark. Support apologies for inaction offers of help. The climax wasn't just Karen's arrest. It was the community's horrified awakening. Weeks turned into months. Sarah healed slowly. Physical wounds faded to scars. Emotional ones ran deeper. Nightmares plagued her. The patio, despite new furniture and enhanced lighting, remained a place of unease. But Willow Creek rallied. Meals arrived. Errands were run. The garden Karen's accomplice had destroyed was replanted by a dozen hands, a vibrant symbol of solidarity. A local nursery, hearing the story, donated several mature, non-toxic rose bushes to replace the poisoned ones. The HOA reformed. Mr. Henderson, elected president, spearheaded new bylaws emphasizing well-being over pedantic regulation. Karen Miller's case progressed. The video Her Outburst the Herbicide, irrefutable. Her lawyer's attempt to paint her as a misunderstood victim of stress collapsed. Neighbors testified about her escalating pattern of harassment. One elderly woman, Mrs. Albright, tearfully recounted a conversation years ago where Karen had spoken bitterly of multiple miscarriages and her inability to carry a child to term, how she'd said some people were undeserving of children. The baby shoe found at the scene was tragically identified by Karen's estranged sister as belonging to the only child Karen had briefly carried, a stillborn daughter mourned in solitude and bitterness decades ago. Her envy of Sarah's blossoming pregnancy, her perceived flaunting of happiness, had ignited a long-dormant, psychopathic rage. Karen Miller was found guilty. The judge, citing her appalling abuse of trust, calculated cruelty and profound disregard for human life, particularly that of an unborn child, sentenced her to a lengthy prison term. Mark and Sarah's civil suit stripped her of assets. Her meticulous house sold, proceeds placed in a trust for Lily. Tom received probation and community service for his lesser, though still serious, offenses. Life found a new cautious rhythm. One sunny afternoon, months later, Mark found Sarah on the new patio bench, a soft blanket over her lap, her belly a magnificent globe. Sketching, a gentle smile. He sat beside her. "What are you drawing?" She showed him their replanted garden, overflowing with a tiny smiling baby nestled amongst blossoms. "Lily's garden," she whispered, eyes shining. "Peace, growth." In her hand, she held a single, perfect yellow rose from one of the new bushes. Weeks later, Lily Grace Coleman arrived healthy, screaming a defiant cry of hope. Holding her, Mark felt an overwhelming love, a profound relief. The ordeal had forged unbreakable bonds, family, community. Willow Creek, once a symbol of terror, became a testament to resilience. In Lily's nursery, on a small shelf, sat a pressed yellow rose from the new garden, a reminder, not of fear, but of solidarity, of light found in darkness. Looking at Sarah cradling Lily, her face radiant with a joy he'd feared extinguished, Mark knew their happy ending wasn't a return to the past, but the embrace of a future hard won. The scars remained visible and invisible, but they were contours of a landscape redefined by love, courage, and the quiet triumph of a newborn's gentle breath filling their home. Self-correction, reflection. During writing. Initially, I considered making the baby shoe Tom's as a red herring, but decided it was more powerful and twisted as Karen's linking directly to her warped motive. The poisoned roses subplot was integrated from the feedback to show Karen's escalating insidious malice and add another layer of immediate danger that Mark had to react to. I made sure to give Tom a distinct, less sophisticated MO brute vandalism crude note compared to Karen's meticulous passive-aggressive and ultimately more psychopathic planning. This makes the two perpetrators' resolution more believable. Karen's backstory, miscarriage's stillborn child, was woven in during the trial sentencing phase to provide a deeper, albeit disturbing psychological underpinning for her hatred of Sarah's pregnancy as requested. Dialogue from Mr. Henderson was kept slightly more formal and concerned, while Harding's was direct and professional. Karen's dialogue shifts from clipped and superior to unhinged, the character count. This version should be significantly longer and fall within the 30,000 to 40,000 character range. I focused on adding descriptive depth internal monologue for Mark, more detailed interaction like the calls with Ben, and fleshing out the consequences and healing process. Okay, I understand. You've provided the improved version of your story, which already incorporates many of the suggestions. It seems you're asking me to now act as if I were the AI improving your original v5.txt based on the detailed feedback you provided to arrive at something like the improved version you just shared. Let's proceed with that understanding. I will take your original v5.txt and the detailed feedback you listed, adding red herrings, developing Karen's motive earlier, increasing suspense, diversifying dialogue, etc., and rewrite v5.txt to produce a new story that aims to meet all those criteria, striving for the 30,000, 40,000 character count. This will be a creative rewriting process. I will be generating new scenes, dialogue, and plot points inspired by your feedback to transform v5.txt, rewritten story based on v5.txt and your detailed feedback. The acrid scent of ozone, sharp and metallic, clawed at Mark's nostrils the moment he stepped onto the patio, a grotesque counterpoint to the sweet fragrance of Sarah's prize-winning roses. His heart hammered against his ribs, a frantic drumbeat of premonition. Then he saw her, or rather, the tableau of horror. Sarah was on the flagstones, a strangled whimpering sound tearing from her throat, her hands pressed desperately against her thigh. Blood shockingly crimson bloomed between her fingers, staining the pristine white fabric of her maternity dress, a horrifying canvas of violence. The light wicker patio chair, her favorite, lay on its side, looking almost comically innocent. But beside it, nestled against the overturned cushion, as if deliberately placed, was a single, worn, pale blue baby shoe. Tiny, disturbingly out of place. Raw, unadulterated fury, cold and sharp as shattered ice, pierced through Mark's initial shock. He was across the patio in 3 long strides, dropping to his knees beside her. Sarah, what happened? Oh God, what happened? His voice was a strained whisper, the world narrowing to her pain-contorted face, the spreading stain, and that inexplicable, chilling baby shoe. Her eyes, wide with terror, and a pain that stole his breath, met his. Her breath came in ragged, shallow gasps. The chair, Mark. The chair. I just sat down. He didn't need to ask more. His gaze flickered to the overturned chair. Not just shredded cushion, but the unnatural glint of silver edges protruding wickedly from within, points unmistakably angled upwards. Razor-thin slivers of metal deliberately embedded, a meticulously crafted trap, and the shoe, an emblem of innocence so starkly juxtaposed with the brutality that it screamed a silent, terrifying message. Someone had turned her sanctuary, her place of peaceful anticipation during the heavy final weeks of her pregnancy, into a weapon. The question hammered in his mind, stark and brutal, who could inflict such calculated, sadistic cruelty, and why was this an attack on Sarah or on Lily or both? Their life in the Willow Creek Homeowners Association community had until recently been the epitome of suburban tranquility. Mark, as head of security for Northwood General Hospital, dealt with chaos daily. Their quiet cul-de-sac was his haven. Sarah, an artist whose vibrant canvases filled their home, was blossoming in her 3rd trimester, eagerly anticipating their daughter Lily. They'd moved in 6 months prior, drawn by good schools and promised neighborliness. Days were gentle rhythms. Mark's early departures in his crisp uniform, Sarah's mornings painting in the sun-drenched nursery-to-be evenings on the patio, discussing Lily assembling furniture, watching fireflies. She'd meticulously chosen that deep, soft armchair. "It's perfect, Mark," she'd said, hand on her belly, a serene smile lighting her face. "Lily and I can watch the sunsets from here." He remembered that image, her peaceful silhouette against the twilight, and a fresh wave of icy rage, colder and more potent than the first, surged through him. That gentle memory so viciously defiled. The first discordant note had been subtle, an unsigned, typed passive-aggressive note about their recycling bin. Then HOA emails, spearheaded by Mrs. Karen Miller Willow Creek's self-appointed queen bee. Tightly permed hair, a voice dripping condescension, even in print. Her opinions were edicts, their welcome mat too bright, Mark's car washing water waste, despite no restrictions, Sarah's window box flowers not native, an affront to aesthetic integrity. Karen had once remarked, quite unnecessarily during an HOA meeting, about new playground equipment. Frankly, I don't see the need. This neighborhood was perfectly peaceful before all these new families started moving in. Some of us value quiet. Sarah had felt a chill at the underlying bitterness. Mark had advised Sarah to ignore it. Busybody's honey. Every neighborhood has one. Sarah, preferring peace, had tried. She'd offered Karen lemonade once. Karen had eyed the glass as if it were poison. I'm far too busy ensuring this community doesn't fall into disrepair to indulge in sugary beverages. Mrs. Henderson, she'd replied, using Sarah's maiden name with pointed emphasis. And that striped patio chair of yours, it's rather garish. It doesn't quite conform to the neutral palette outlined in the community guidelines, Section 4, subsection B. Sarah had come inside flustered. She practically accused my chair of being a public nuisance, Mark. He'd kissed her forehead. Don't let her get to you. It's a beautiful chair. He hadn't realized then the venom simmering beneath Karen Miller's meticulously maintained facade. Then there was Mr. Abernathy, their immediate neighbor to the left. A reclusive older man recently widowed, who'd had a sharp exchange with Sarah about their property line and a new rose trellis she'd wanted to install. He'd accused them of encroaching. His face flushed, his words clipped and angry. Some people have no respect for boundaries he'd snapped before retreating into his perpetually darkened house. Mark had smoothed things over, or so he thought, by slightly moving the planned trellis. Abernathy hadn't spoken to them since just watched from his window, sometimes his expression unreadable. Could bitterness over a fence line escalate to this? The first true alarm bell, signaling more than petty officiousness or neighborly grumbling, had rung just last week. Sarah called him at work, her voice trembling. Mark, you need to come home. I don't know who. He found Sarah on the porch, tears streaming, pointing towards her small vegetable garden. Tomatoes, zucchini, basil, systematically ripped up, stomped into the earth. Lying amidst the carnage was a small, distinctive gardening trowel, Sarah's missing from their unlocked shed. And just visible under a brutalized tomato vine, a faint footprint, too large for Karen, but not distinct enough to be certain. It could have been anyone. Karen was here earlier, Sarah choked out. Another notice rose bush height. I told her I wasn't feeling well. I asked her to leave the notice. She looked at me, Mark, with such hatred. Then she said, some people have no respect for community standards. They just expect to get away with everything. Sarah had gone to lie down, only to discover the destruction later. Later that day, Mark found a new typed note tucked into their mailbox. Different from Karen's usual HOA stationary cruder, almost childish block letters, stay away from what isn't yours. Some things are sacred. He hadn't shown it to Sarah, not wanting to frighten her further. Karen's hatred was palpable. But the footprint, the strange note, Abernathy's simmering resentment over property, the unease deepened. He installed discreet security cameras the next day overlooking their front and backyards. A precaution now revealed as tragically late, tragically insufficient. The days following were thick with unspoken tension. Sarah grew withdrawn. He caught Karen Miller watching their house several times, her expression unsettling. Then, the official HOA warning letter, certified mail, fabricated violations from the decimated garden, unapproved landscaping modifications to Sarah's beloved chair, improper patio furniture aesthetics, demand for immediate rectification or hefty fines. Signed Karen Miller, President Willow Creek, HOA. Sarah, pale, clutched a new plain beige cushion. Maybe, if I just change the cushion, Mark, I don't want any more trouble. Not now. Her voice small, defeated. He'd drafted a firm response hinting at legal action, not yet sent. That was yesterday. And now this horror, this tiny chilling blue shoe. Kneeling beside Sarah, the scent of her blood, thick Mark's professional training kicked in. All right, honey, breathe with me. Deep breaths. Let me see. His voice calmer now, the ER voice. Gently he eased her hands away. Several deep, vicious gashes. the fabric of her dress sliced clean. Embedded in the deepest cut, the glint of metal. Razor blades, multiple, strategically placed. This was a targeted, malicious assault. To his pregnant wife, the baby shoe, a message, a taunt, pressure. Direct pressure. He grabbed a clean towel, pressing it firmly. Sarah cried out, I know it hurts. I'm so sorry. I need to call 911. He fumbled for his phone, fingers slick with her blood. As he dialed, his eyes locked on the sabotaged chair, then the shoe. Karen's obsession, Abernathy's resentment, the anonymous strange note. The answer wasn't clear. It was a terrifying, murky pool of possibilities. Sirens shattered the quiet. Paramedics worked quickly. Mark hovered, giving medical history, his voice tight with controlled fury. Neighbors emerged. Mrs. Henderson from next door, hand over her mouth. Mr. Peterson, aghast. And then Karen Miller, on her perfectly manicured lawn arms, crossed, watching with an expression that could only be described as smug satisfaction. No concern, no shock, just cold, calculating appraisal. Mark's blood ran colder. He met her gaze. A flicker of something, triumph, before her expression smoothed into feigned, distant concern. Then he saw Mr. Abernathy standing half hidden in his doorway, a flicker of movement before he retreated back into the shadows. We need to get her to Northwood General, the lead paramedic said. Assess these lacerations, check on the baby. You riding with us? Mark nodded, his gaze shifting from Karen to Abernathy's dark window. Yes. And officer, he turned to a young policewoman, her eyes serious. I want her investigated. He pointed directly at Karen Miller. She's the HOA president. She's been harassing my wife for months. That chair was a specific target of hers. He paused. But there's more. Our garden was vandalized last week. We received a strange typed threatening note. And my neighbor, Mr. Abernathy, at 12 Willow Drive, we've had issues with him. He's been acting strangely. And there was a baby shoe, a tiny blue one, next to my wife. I don't know what it means. The officer looked from Mark to Karen, then towards Abernathy's house, then back to the brutalized chair her colleague was now carefully examining, bagging the embedded blades and the small shoe as evidence. We'll definitely be looking into all of it, sir. We'll need full statements. In the ambulance, Sarah's skin was cold, her face ashen. The baby, she whispered, her voice raspy. Is Lily okay? Her hand found his. Don't let her win, Mark. She pleaded, her eyes filled with a desperate fire. Whoever did this, don't let them win. He squeezed her hand. They won't, Sarah. I promise. As the doors closed, shutting out Karen Miller's gloating face and the unsettling stillness of Abernathy's home, a new, harder resolve settled in Mark. He would use every resource. Northwood General's ER felt alien. Dr. Ramirez, the on-call obstetrician, was waiting, calm but serious. Mark, I'm so sorry. Let's get her stabilized. Relegated to the waiting area, helplessness, a suffocating blanket, he heard Sarah's cries of pain. He paced, fists clenched. The razors. Karen's smirk. Abernathy's shadowy presence. The chilling note. The baby shoe. A maelstrom. He pulled out his phone, calling Ben Carter, his lead security investigator and ex-cop. Ben, it's Mark. Urgent. Sarah. Attacked at our home. He quickly explained the chair, Karen's campaign, Abernathy's potential involvement, the note, the shoe. The police are there, but I need our own eyes. My cameras, remote access. Pull footage from my patio for the last 24 hours. Look for anyone tampering with a wicker chair, specifically Karen Miller, or Abernathy. Older thin might look frail, but he's stronger than he looks. And check the garden footage from last Tuesday. I need to know who was there. On it, Mark. I'll call you. How's Sarah? They're working on her. The baby. Hang in there, Mark. We'll get to the bottom of this. An eternity later, Dr. Ramirez emerged. Mark, she began, her voice gentle. Sarah's stable. Lacerations were deep, very nasty. Muscle involvement, but no major arteries. Cleaned, stitched. Blood transfusion. She's going to be very sore. Significant scarring. Mark sagged against the wall. And Lily. The baby, Dr. Ramirez's expression softened. We did an ultrasound. The baby is fine, strong heartbeat, active. Sarah's body cushioned most of the impact. But the stress, the blood loss, it's a concern. We need to monitor Sarah very closely for premature labor. She's lucky, Mark. This could have been so much worse. Lucky. The word seemed obscene. His phone buzzed. Ben. Mark, I've got it. You need to see this. Grim. Sending a secure link. The police are going to want this. It's not what you might be entirely expecting. Mark's hand trembled. Click. The video feed. His patio. Fast forward. Then approximately 10:30 a.m. He saw her. Karen Miller. She slipped onto their patio like a wraith, furtive, head swiveling. Small, dark bag. Mark's breath hitched. He watched blood turning to ice as Karen approached Sarah's striped chair, pulled on gloves, took out a handful of individual utility knife blades. With chilling precision, she began forcing them one by one up through the bottom of the thick cushion, through the wicker supports, embedding them deep, sharp edges pointing upwards. Tested one with a gloved finger, a slight, almost imperceptible nod. Her posture radiated cold, focused malice. Nearly 10 minutes. Methodical, painstaking. As she finished, she carefully collected any visible debris. Then she paused. She reached into her bag again, pulled out the small, pale blue baby shoe. She looked at it for a long, strange moment, almost cradling it in her gloved hand. Then, with utmost care, she placed it on the ground right beside the leg of the chair, partially tucking it under the edge of the cushion Sarah would soon sit on. The camera's microphone, surprisingly sensitive, picked up her muttered words, laced with a venom that made Mark physically sick, that should teach the entitled little breeder to respect community standards. Maybe now she'll learn her place. Some people just don't deserve to be happy. Mark felt bile rise. Breeder. The shoe wasn't random. It was part of her grotesque, premeditated ritual. This wasn't just HOA rules. This was personal, deeply psychopathically personal. This was the twist, undeniable proof of her motive, far darker than simple officiousness. Pure, unadulterated hatred and something else, something broken and deeply envious. He remembered Karen's comment about not needing children in the neighborhood, the bitterness in her tone. He recalled seeing through her open curtains, once a fleeting glimpse of a small, dust-covered photograph on her mantelpiece, what looked like a very young child, before she'd quickly drawn them shut. Had she lost a child? Was this some monstrous, twisted transference of grief and rage? Ben Mark's voice was hoarse when he called back. Did you see anything on the garden footage from last week? Was it Abernathy? No, Mark. Not Abernathy. Not Miller either. The garden vandal was younger, wearing a dark hoodie, pulled low, moved quickly, almost professionally, slashed and stomped. Different MO entirely. We're enhancing now, trying for a facial composite, but it's tough. This doesn't feel connected to Miller's meticulous, almost ritualistic attack. You might be dealing with two separate threats. Two. The thought was staggering. He saved the footage of Karen, forwarded the link to Detective Harding. Message Detective. This is the footage of Karen Miller. You'll find it illuminating. The baby shoe was hers. She placed it there. He then sent the inconclusive garden footage. This is the garden vandal. Not Miller, not Abernathy. Still unidentified. Just then, Ben called again, his voice urgent. Mark, rewatching the Miller footage. After the chair, after the shoe, she goes to your rose bushes, sprays something on them from a small unlabeled bottle, then wipes the nozzle and leaves. Given her state of mind, what if it's poison, something to harm Sarah if she touched them? A new horror. Sarah loved tending her roses, her hands often bare. Get a still to Harding Ben. Tell them to check those roses, find that bottle. This woman is unhinged. Sarah was moved to a private room. He sat by her bedside, holding her hand. The sound of his phone startled him. Detective Harding. Mr. Coleman, I've reviewed the Miller footage. It's damning. We have a team en route to Karen Miller's right now. Search warrant, arrest warrant. Aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, felony, fetal endangerment. The information about the baby shoe, her words, it paints a very clear, very disturbing picture of premeditation and motive. We'll also be looking for that spray bottle and testing the roses. As for the garden vandalism and the threatening note, that's still an open line of inquiry. Tom, the handyman you mentioned earlier, we're bringing him in for a chat, based on that initial footprint concern, see if he knows anything. Abernathy's alibi for this morning is solid. He was at a doctor's appointment across town, But we're keeping an eye on things. Mark didn't feel like a hero. He just felt an overwhelming need to protect his family. The news of Karen Miller's arrest spread. Mr. Henderson, HOA treasurer, called horrified. Mark, is it true? Karen. Mark confirmed. Emergency board meeting tonight. We need to address this. If you feel up to it. Part of him wanted to retreat, but Karen had thrived on apathy. All right, Mr. Henderson, he said slowly. I'll be there. The clubhouse was packed, anxious, angry, bewildered. Karen Miller's chair empty. Mr. Henderson recounted the events, his voice trembling with indignation, gasps, murmurs. Shame. He invited Mark to speak. Mark stood, calmly, voice filled with controlled anger. He described Sarah's injuries, the fear, the violation. For months, he said, Karen Miller waged a campaign of harassment. It started with petty complaints, escalated to vandalism of a symbolic nature, and culminated in a premeditated act of violence that could have killed my wife and my unborn child. He detailed the razors, the baby shoe, her hateful words, captured on video the potential poisoning of the roses. This wasn't about rules. This was about a deep-seated malice and envy, a desire to inflict pain. He paused. Some of you found her difficult, easier to comply. But what happened to Sarah is a direct result of unchecked power and a community that for too long allowed one person's bitterness to dictate its terms. Heads nodded. Tears. My wife is strong. Our daughter is a fighter. They will recover. But this community also needs to recover. As he finished, the main doors opened. Two uniformed officers flanking a disheveled, handcuffed Karen Miller, Detective Harding. A collective gasp. Karen's eyes, wild and furious, found Mark. You! She shrieked, lunging before officers restrained her. You did this to me. You and your trashy wife. You broke the rules. You flaunted everything. You deserved it. She deserved it. Bringing your life into my quiet world. Some people shouldn't be allowed to be happy when others have suffered. Her outburst, raw, unhinged, stripped away any last vestiges of her persona. The community saw her, not a stringent enforcer, but a dangerous, delusional woman consumed by her own malice and tragic, twisted grief. Detective Harding stepped forward. Karen Miller has been formally charged with aggravated assault with a deadly weapon and felony fetal endangerment. Evidence is overwhelming. We found the utility knife packaging, spare blades, and a container of highly concentrated herbicide in her home. The rose bushes tested positive. Further charges for attempted poisoning will likely follow. She will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. The officers let a struggling, screaming Karen Miller out. Stunned silence, then neighbors approached Mark. Support apologies, promises to help. The climax wasn't just Karen's arrest. It was the community's awakening. In the weeks that followed, Willow Creek began to heal. Sarah was discharged, her physical recovery slow, emotional recovery harder, nightmares, reluctance to use the patio despite new furniture and enhanced security. But neighbor support was a balm. Meals arrived. The garden, which remained a mystery for a few more days until a local youth, Tom, confessed to the police about the vandalism and the crude note, a misguided attempt to scare them after a perceived slight over a lawnmower Mark wouldn't lend him, was replanted by a dozen willing hands. Tom, a troubled kid, not a hardened criminal, received counseling and community service, his actions paling in comparison to Karen's. The HOA reformed. Mr. Henderson, new president, new bylaws. Karen Miller's reign was over. Her case moved swiftly. The video, her outburst, the herbicide, her defense's attempts to portray her as a victim of stress crumbled when her estranged sister testified about Karen's tragic loss of a newborn daughter, decades earlier, a grief that had curdled into bitterness and an obsession with perceived slights from those who had what she'd lost. The baby shoe had been her daughter's. Karen Miller was found guilty on all charges. The judge spoke scathingly of her appalling abuse of trust and shocking disregard for human life, fueled by a profound and tragic envy. Significant prison term. A civil suit stripped her of assets. Her house sold, proceeds to a trust for Lily. Life slowly found a new normal. One sunny afternoon, months later, Mark found Sarah on the new patio bench, a soft blanket on her lap, her belly prominent. Sketching, a gentle smile. He sat beside her. What are you drawing? She showed him their new garden overflowing a tiny smiling baby nestled amongst blossoms. "It's Lily's garden," she said, eyes shining. "A place of peace of growth." A few weeks later, Lily Grace Coleman was born healthy, screaming a symbol of hope. Holding her, Mark felt overwhelming love. The ordeal had been horrific, but it forged unbreakable bonds, family, community. Willow Creek was no longer just a place they lived. It was where they faced darkness and found light. As he looked at Sarah, cradling Lily, her face radiant with a joy he had feared lost, he knew they had their happy ending. The scars remained a reminder, but overshadowed by love and the enduring power of a community that chose solidarity over silence. The lingering echo was not fear, but quiet triumph, and the sweet, gentle sounds of a newborn's breath filling their home.